I will tell you this, that Bill Blatty had never seen anything that I directed when he offered me The Exorcist. I'm going to take a minute and tell him this story, okay? Originally, I had made one film in the late 60s with Sonny and Cher. It was called Good Times. You guys know who Sonny? Thanks, Mom. You guys know the film Good Times? If you don't, get the hell out of here. I made this one film. It's not good, Mom. It's pretty bad. But it was my first film. Before that, I had done documentaries and live television. But the film got a lot of attention in Hollywood. And this Blake Edwards was directing, was planning to produce a feature film of his television series, Peter Gunn. Did you ever hear of Peter Gunn? If not. But anyway, he called me. I was a young guy. And he called me in to meet with him about directing the feature film of Peter Gunn. And I loved the show. I thought it was a great television show, and it was a terrific opportunity for me. And I went to his office. He gave me the script. I took it home. Home then for me was the Sunset Marquee. I had a little flat at the Sunset Marquee. You all know where that is. Okay. And I read the script and I hated it. It was terrible. And I went in to see Blake the following Monday. And I sat down and he prepared breakfast. He had breakfast for the two of us, English muffin, cup of tea. And he said, so? And I said, Blake, this is the worst script I've ever read. I said, your worst enemy wouldn't do this to you. And he stood up, and he was a black belt karate. He stood up and he said, what do you know? You're nothing but a punk kid. You don't know anything. And you're telling me the script is no good? Hi, George. How are you? And I said, Blake, it's awful. I'd love to work with you, but I can't do this. It's just terrible. And there were some people in the room. They were in the shadows. I didn't see them. I didn't know who they were, studio guys, whatever. And I left. And as I left the building, this guy came running after me. And he said, Mr. Friedkin. I said, yeah, I was going to the parking lot at Paramount. And he said, my name is Bill Blatty, and I'm the guy who wrote that script. I said, geez, I'm sorry. I didn't see your name on it. And he said, well, that often happened with Blake. And he said, but I wrote it. He said, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. The script is no good. We've all told this to Blake. He just wants to make the picture and get paid and move on. Now, he was a great director, but he had a company and he needed to have a lot of films go through it. So I didn't see Blatty after that for 4 years. And I was on tour with the French Connection 4 years later. And before I left Los Angeles to go to the East Coast, there was a package that came in the mail in a brown paper bag. And it was from William Peter Blatty. And I only remember this terrible script of Peter Gunn. And so I threw the package into my suitcase and forgot about it and took it with me across country. And then when I came back, by way of San Francisco, my last night of this tour, I had dinner plans at 8. I finished my interviews at 5, and I opened this package and sat down with a view of the Golden Gate Bridge out the window, and I sat down in a very comfortable chair, and I started to read the novel, The Exorcist. And I canceled my dinner plans and read the whole thing that night, and I was flabbergasted. And he had his phone number on the script, and I called him and I said, Bill, this is sensational. This is just great. And he told me some of the background, which we may cover later. And he said, would you like to direct the film? And I said, why? You know, he said, because you're the only director who ever told me the truth about one of my scripts. He had not seen The French Connection or the 2 other films I had made before that. And that's how I got to direct the film. It was kismet or fate or an act of God, if you will. I would use computer-generated imagery, which would have made all of the special effects much more believable, possibly even more disturbing. But we had to do everything mechanically. You couldn't make this film this way now because it is too serious. You would have to have a bunch of explosions and comic book characters, and a guy would come in as the Exorcist with a letter on his chest. You know, that's what film is today. The Exorcist, I say this, you know, standing quite apart from it. It's because of what it's based on and Blatty's take on it, his wonderful novel, that it still lives. But you couldn't make the film today like this. It's too slow. It doesn't have enough bang, you know. And it really is about the mystery of faith. It's not about some superhero. Jason Miller passed away a few years ago. Linda Blair is still around. She's now 52 years old.
Do you keep in touch with them?
I keep in touch with them, absolutely, all the time. Jason died very sadly, and a few years ago, back in Scranton, where he came from. He had never made a film before. I saw his picture in a newspaper. He had written a play called That Championship Season, which won a Pulitzer Prize and a Tony Award. I saw his picture in the New York Times. We had cast somebody else, who shall be nameless. And I told my casting director in New York, I want to meet this guy because I read the article about him. And it said in the article in the New York Times that he was married to Jackie Gleason's daughter, and he was a milkman at the time in Flushing, New York, but he had had small parts in off-Broadway plays and on the road. And he wasn't of great interest to me. But then I read that he had studied to be a priest at Catholic University in Washington and dropped out because of a crisis of faith. And so I read that, and I'm looking at his picture, and I saw Father Karras. So I went to the studio, and I said, we have to, unfortunately, let the actor that we signed go, and I'm going to go with this guy. And they said, well, who is he? He's a playwright. Has he ever acted? Not really. He's done some small parts. But again, the entire cast was like handed to me by some thing. I'm telling you, I didn't know about... The only 2 people we went after were Von Sydow and Lee J. Cobb, who were 2 of the greatest actors in the world. The rest of the people had done little or nothing. No, I don't know how those... It's a novel you're talking about called Demeter.
Demeter, yeah.
Yeah. No, that was a recent novel by... I have no plans to direct it. No, not at all. I think he's a one... We're in touch. We speak twice a week at least, sometimes longer, more often. But no, I have no plans to... You know, I think, how could I make a better film than this? I really feel that way.